What is going on, guys? It is your boy Kazak here, and today I am back at y'all with another JRPG video. So, about like a week or so ago, I actually did a first impressions on the Trails of Sky, the first demo, which is basically the brand new remake that Falcon was working on, and I was extremely impressed by it. Obviously, this was such a great time seeing it, especially as somebody who played the original game. It was really cool to see everything being like 3D and seeing the different changes in here and stuff. And after playing that demo, it got me thinking about some more JRPGs that I think deserve a full-fledged remake. And it would just be cool to see these games be done in a brand new 3D modern style. So, with that said, I have five more JRPGs that I would absolutely love to see get the remake treatment. The first game I'm going to include in this list is Tales of the Abyss. Now, when it comes to the Tales franchise, there are so many different games that are pretty deserving of a remake treatment. Games such as Tales of Fantasia, Tales of Destiny, Tales of Rebirth, Tales of Destiny 2 even, or even, Eternia. Like, there's just too many games to count when it comes to like which one truly deserves a full-on remake. But ultimately, when I think about it, I personally feel like that Tales of the Abyss is the best candidate for a remake treatment. And the biggest reason why I say that it is because Tales of the Abyss is a game that is somewhat older, but at the same time newer. And what I mean by that is that Tales of the Abyss is a game that originally came out on the PlayStation 2 and it got re-released on the Nintendo 3DS. So there is a little bit of like quality to Abyss where there is enough modernness there that newer players can still play it and enjoy it, but it's old enough to where even older Tales fans will also enjoy some of the elements of this game. So I feel like that when it comes to Abyss, this game has a really good, solid storyline. All the characters are generally pretty likable, and the gameplay itself is still pretty solid. So I think that when it comes to a remake, all they would have to do is simply just make this game look extremely pretty in 3D graphics, bring back the world map systems, improve upon the gameplay, maybe kind of make it similar to like Arise's combat system, and just build upon that. And then, ultimately, of course, they could add in their little cameo outfits and stuff like that. But ultimately, I feel like Tales of the Abyss is a good sort of like candidate to bring in not just the older Tales fans, but possibly even newcomers into the franchise who look at a game like Tales of the Abyss and they're like, oh wow, this game is actually really freaking good. And ultimately, I want to introduce a Tales game that isn't just like, say, Symphonia, because Symphonia is always the obvious answer. And that's why personally, I would not go for Symphonia for a remake. But for Abyss, I think this game is really good, and not to mention it's one of the Tales games that not too many people have played it, but if you are a Tales fan, you probably have played this one. So I think for Abyss, this is a very good game to do a remake treatment of, especially since Tales of the Abyss is one of the most beloved Tales games in the entire franchise. And while I know a lot of people really want a remaster of this game, I'm personally more in favor of this game just getting a full-on remake. I mean, I don't see why it shouldn't get one. I think it more than deserves one, especially at this current point in time. I mean, if games like Persona 4 can get a remake, then I think Abyss more than deserves it as well. Now, this next one might be pretty obvious to a lot of people, and that is Xenogears. Man, when it comes to like old school PS1 RPGs, I there's no other game that I can think deserves a remake more than Xenogears. I mean, this game is just such a unique entry, and it was truly a PS1 game that I feel like was really ahead of its time, especially with the story and the characters. I mean, this game was like it hit really deep. That honestly, even if they were to remake this game, it would be kind of difficult because the way that this game touches on certain topics and parts of its story is really amazing and something that you don't really see nowadays when it comes to modern JRPGs. And even when it comes to the gameplay front, it was awesome. Like, okay, you had like your traditional turn-based battles, but you also got to explore with like robots, and you can do like turn-based combat with the awesome mechs and all that stuff. And just imagine that being done in like a HD 2D format. And then they can completely fix the later half of the game where it sort of felt like the story was kind of rushed in a weird way, because in the first part of the game you had a whole bunch of gameplay stuff you could do. You could explore around the world, get into a bunch of battles and stuff. And while you still kind of do that in the second disc, it wasn't really delivered in the same way that most people would have wanted it to be. And instead it was more like text based, and with the occasional like fights here and there and stuff like that. You could tell that development wise they just didn't have enough time to work on the second half of the game. So by doing a remake, they could have that opportunity to fix that. The biggest reason why I would much prefer a 2D remake of this game is because if they were to try to go the 3D route, I'm gonna be honest, this game would basically end up just being like another Final Fantasy VII remake situation where they essentially have to pump out like 3 to 4 games just to tell one single story. And honestly, I don't really want that. I just prefer that if they kept everything into one disc and, just try to keep as much of the story in here as possible while still also expanding upon it as well. I mean, it might seem very ambitious and that is a lot of effort, but I do think that if they genuinely try and they genuinely do care about bringing Xenogears back, it's definitely possible. I feel like Square is still experienced enough to handle this in a pretty good way. This one is pretty much a no-brainer. I'm going to be putting in Suikoden 1 as a game that deserves to be remade. Out of all the Suikoden games, I feel that Suikoden 1 deserves this treatment more than pretty much any other game in the entire franchise. Some people would say 2, but in my opinion, Suikoden 2 still holds up well enough that I don't think it needs a remake as of right now, nearly as much as Suikoden 1. Because the thing about Suikoden 1 is that even though I played this game and I played a remastered version of it, there's just a lot of elements about this game that does feel a little bit dated even by today's standards. And I think this game truly could benefit from a full blown 3D remake where they expand upon the story, give characters voice acting and all that stuff. Basically, I would kind of like this game to sort of be handled similar to the way that Suikoden 5 was handled, where you had 3D graphics, you had the voice acting on top of it, and then you have the improved 6-man party combat systems where you can have like different formations and all that. And then for the wartime battles, it could be like a real-time strategy sort of thing, just like in Suikoden 5. Not to mention, Konami has clearly proved that they can do remakes pretty well. I mean, we just had the Silent Hill 2 remake, which was pretty well received, and very recently we had the Metal Gear Solid Delta remake, which is currently being positively received. I mean, it already sold 1 million copies on its very first day. So I think giving this same treatment to the very first entry of Suikoden would definitely help out a lot. And in my opinion, what could possibly bring in even more new people into the franchise, because the gameplay and everything itself would be completely brand new. Like, this would be a Suikoden entry that we have never seen before, and ultimately will feel like a completely different game because they're going to be using a new engine, a new different sort of combat system. Now, granted, I would also be extremely hyped for a Suikoden 2 remake, but when it comes to games that I feel like would really benefit from this treatment, it's definitely Suikoden 1, in my honest opinion. Alright, so I'm going to throw in another PS1 classic on here, and that is Legend of Legaia. Man, still to this very day, I have never seen a JRPG that was quite as unique as Legend of Legaia. I mean, it had an incredibly awesome combat system that had this unique mixture between like a fighting game and turn-based combat, on top of some semi-light Pokemon elements where you can capture these monsters called Cirus, and you can essentially use them to perform magic abilities and all that cool stuff. I mean, the system itself was just really, really dope. Honestly, when it comes to a lot of PS1 RPGs that I played, Legaia probably has like one of the best combat systems that I've ever seen from this generation. I'm not even kidding on that. Seriously, it's just that good. Now, when it comes to the story, it was also surprisingly mature for its time as well. And while it might not be seen as much by today's standards, it's still pretty darn entertaining, and there's so many likable characters in this particular story that you really start to eventually care about them and want to learn more about their stories. So just imagine this game being completely remade and having a lot of improvements to the combat system, and then also, expanding upon some of the lore in the story as well. I think that a game like this would truly shake up a lot of people's is like minds. It would just be like, whoa, how have I never played a game like this before? Like this game is so freaking cool. And that is what Legaia is. It's a really dope, cool JRPG that never got the attention that it truly deserved. So by giving this a remake treatment, it would be exposing a whole new generation of JRPG players to such a amazing and such an obscure hidden gem of a game. Last but certainly not least, we have Radiata Stories. So for those of you guys who checked out my most underrated JRPG video, you would know that I absolutely love this game. I love the story, I love the characters, I love the fact that it had a really cool day and night system. I love the fact that each and every single character in the town had their own sort of unique schedules and side quests that would occur throughout the entire day. It just made the entire world of Radiata feel so alive and expansive in so many different ways. However, I do have my fair share of critiques about the game. Now, I won't go into any major details about the story to avoid spoilers, but the biggest gripe for me is how the later half of the story feels completely undercooked and rushed. I also feel that the gameplay was on the weaker side because you only play as the main character, Jack. So, for a potential remake, I would like to see them expand further on the game by taking the time to flesh out the later half of the narrative and give the combat system a little bit more depth. Kind of similar to Star Ocean 4's combat system, while also allowing us to play with all the different characters that you recruit throughout the game. I feel that these additions alone would greatly improve the quality of Radiata Stories and make it feel more complete as a result. Granted, the likelihood of Radiata Stories ever getting a remake is pretty much slim to none, but hey, one can dream, right? But yeah, I will also be fine with a remaster treatment as well. Just upscale the graphics, add in some quality of life adjustments, and make all the characters playable for the combat. That's pretty much all I want. So there you have it. These are just a couple of more JRPGs I would love to see get a remake treatment. I'm curious to see what you guys would like to see be remade in the comments below. And with all that said, man, this was your boy Kazak, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.